Los Angeles has been in some form of crisis for most of its existence. It's a city built in a desert, on earthquake faults, in a fire zone, surrounded by mountains that trap pollution, dependent on water imported from hundreds of miles away. That's always been true. What locals will tell you now is that something has shifted, that the specific combination of problems the city is facing feels qualitatively different from the chronic issues they grew up managing. Here is why Los Angeles is starting to collapse and why locals are admitting it. The homeless crisis is beyond what the city can process. Los Angeles has the largest unsheltered homeless population of any American city. The Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority's 2023 point-in-time count documented approximately 75,518 people experiencing homelessness across Los Angeles County, with approximately 46,260 of them unsheltered, sleeping in tents, in vehicles, or without any shelter on any given night. The Skid Row district of downtown Los Angeles, a roughly 50-block area between 3rd and 7th Streets, has between 4,000 and 8,000 people living on the sidewalks at any given time. The city and county have spent enormous amounts attempting to address this. Measure HHH, a $1.2 billion bond measure approved by Los Angeles voters in 2016, was specifically dedicated to building permanent supportive housing for homeless people. By 2023, the program had housed thousands of people at an average per unit cost that has been documented at $600,000 to over $800,000 per unit of supportive housing, making the Los Angeles homeless housing program among the most expensive per-unit housing construction in the world. The math does not work. At $700,000 per unit and 46,260 unsheltered people, sheltering the current unsheltered population would cost approximately $32 billion. And the unsheltered population is growing faster than the housing being built. The 2023 count was up from previous years despite the massive spending. What locals report experiencing: public spaces that have become unusable, parks that parents are taking their children away from, transit stops that have become encampment sites, and a visible daily reality of human suffering and dysfunction that produces both genuine compassion and genuine exhaustion in people who live with it every day. It is not that Los Angeles lacks resources or political will. It is that the problem has exceeded the scale of any intervention the city has been able to mount. The specific factors driving the crisis are multiple and interact. The extraordinarily high cost of housing in Los Angeles makes the margin between housed and unhoused far narrower than in most American cities, meaning more people are one crisis away from losing their housing at any given moment. The concentration of services in Los Angeles, including a historically permissive approach to camping in public spaces, has attracted people experiencing homelessness from other regions. The failure of mental health and substance abuse treatment infrastructure nationally has deposited people with serious mental illness and severe addiction in public spaces across the city. The political response has been significant and genuinely complicated by competing visions. The city council and county supervisors have passed multiple plans, strategies, and spending authorizations. Mayor Karen Bass declared a homelessness emergency on her first day in office in December 2022 and launched the Inside Safe initiative to move encampment residents into interim housing. Court decisions, including a 2018 ruling in Martin v. City of Los Angeles that limited the city's ability to enforce anti-camping ordinances without offering shelter first, constrained enforcement options until the Supreme Court's 2024 ruling in City of Grants Pass v. Johnson gave municipalities broader authority to enforce camping restrictions. The legal landscape has been as contested as the policy landscape. The trajectory of the problem? more people experiencing homelessness, higher per-unit costs for the housing being built, a widening gap between the scale of the response and the scale of the need, is what locals mean when they say the situation feels different from the chronic Los Angeles difficulty they have always lived with. The housing crisis is driving the population that makes the city function. Los Angeles is one of the most expensive housing markets in the United States. The median home price in Los Angeles County has hovered around $800,000 to $900,000 in recent years. The median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles City is approximately $2,000 to $2,500 per month. A household needs to earn approximately $80,000 to $100,000 per year to afford the median rent without being housing cost burden, spending more than 30% of income on housing. The service workers, teachers, firefighters, paramedics, and the full range of middle-income workers that any functional city requires cannot afford to live in Los Angeles. They commute from Riverside County, from San Bernardino County, from the distant suburbs of the Inland Empire, traveling 60 to 90 miles each way to jobs they cannot afford to live near. Los Angeles has some of the worst traffic congestion in the world, partly because the people who work in it cannot afford to live in it. The housing shortage has structural causes that have been accumulating since the post-World War II suburban development era. Los Angeles's zoning codes are among the most restrictive for new housing in any major American city. Single-family zoning historically covered approximately 75% of the city's residential land, limiting the multifamily development that would allow more people to live in the same geographic area. The political history of that zoning is inseparable from the history of residential segregation. Single-family zoning was used explicitly and successfully to maintain racial segregation in American cities in the 20th century, and the communities that benefited most from those restrictions have been the most resistant to changing them. State-level reforms, including SB 9, effective 2022, allowing duplexes on single-family lots statewide, and SB 10, allowing up to 10 units near transit, have begun to change the zoning framework. But the construction pipeline from zoning reform to completed housing takes years and depends on market conditions, interest rates, and construction costs that have all moved against new development since 2022. High interest rates and elevated construction costs in the post-pandemic period have slowed new housing starts precisely when the housing shortage is most acute. The specific human cost. Teachers in Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district in the United States, earn starting salaries in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. At current Los Angeles rents, a beginning teacher would spend 50 to 60% of their pre-tax income on a one-bedroom apartment. The school district runs teacher recruitment programs specifically targeting teachers from lower-cost states because the compensation is not competitive with the cost of living. Nurses, social workers, librarians, and the full range of public service professionals face the same arithmetic. A city that cannot house its own public servants is experiencing a structural failure that goes beyond housing affordability into something that affects every public institution. The fire risk has fundamentally changed. The January 2025 wildfires that burned through Pacific Palisades and the Eaton Canyon area near Altadena were, by the metrics that matter for a city, catastrophic. The Palisades fire burned approximately 23,448 acres and destroyed approximately 6,800 or more structures. The Eaton fire burned approximately 14,117 acres and destroyed thousands more structures. The combined death toll was 29 people. The combined insured losses are estimated in the tens of billions of dollars. These fires occurred in January, not the traditional peak of California fire season, which runs from summer through late fall, but the period when the Santa Ana winds create their own specific fire conditions independent of accumulated dry vegetation. The fires moved through terrain that had not historically been considered extreme high risk, burning neighborhoods that had existed for decades with occasional fire scares, but no catastrophic losses. The insurance industry's response to the fires, and to the preceding years of accelerating fire losses, has been to exit the California market. State Farm, Allstate, Farmers Insurance, and other major insurers have either stopped writing new policies in California, dropped existing policyholders in high-risk areas, or both. The California Fair Plan, the state's insurer of last resort, has seen its policy count explode as private insurers have withdrawn, and it is significantly undercapitalized relative to its current exposure. Homeowners who cannot obtain private insurance and who cannot afford or find coverage through the Fair Plan are uninsured in a fire zone. When their home burns, they are dependent on FEMA disaster assistance, which is a fraction of the actual replacement cost of a home. FEMA's maximum individual disaster assistance grant is capped at approximately $43,900 as of 2024 against home replacement costs in the Pacific Palisades that run $2 million to $5 million and more for standard properties. The insurance market dysfunction in California is not a temporary disruption. It is the insurance industry's mathematical assessment that the risk in California's wildland-urban interface has become uninsurable at any price that California homeowners will currently pay. Insurance is a business of risk pooling. It works when the risk is spread across many policyholders, most of whom never make a major claim. When a specific geographic area has fire risk high enough that a significant proportion of policyholders are likely to make catastrophic claims in any given decade, the premium required to remain solvent is higher than most homeowners will pay and higher than California's insurance regulation framework has allowed insurers to charge. California's insurance regulatory system requires insurers to justify rate increases before a state commissioner using historical loss data. The problem is that the historical loss data from a climate-stable past is no longer predictive for a climate-disrupted future. Insurers who price their policies based on historical California fire losses underestimated the actual risk as climate change accelerated fire intensity and frequency. Those who have left the market have done so after absorbing losses that their historical models did not anticipate. The 2025 Palisades and Eaton fires, occurring in January in neighborhoods that felt safer than the most acute fire zones in the foothills and mountains, will accelerate the insurance withdrawal further. The question for Los Angeles is what a city does when a significant portion of its most valuable real estate becomes effectively uninsurable by the private market. The water infrastructure and climate reality. Los Angeles has always been a city built on borrowed water. The Los Angeles Aqueduct, completed in 1913 under William Mulholland, diverts water from the Owens Valley 233 miles to the north, and the acquisition of those water rights, done partly through deception, dried out the Owens Lake by 1926, creating a dust source that still generates some of California's worst air quality events when the wind blows. The California Aqueduct brings water from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta hundreds of miles south. Climate change is affecting both sources. Snowpack in the Sierra Nevada, the natural reservoir that releases water through the summer melt season into the rivers and aqueducts that supply Southern California, is declining in total volume and melting earlier in the season, creating a mismatch between when the water arrives and when the demand is highest. Droughts of increasing frequency and severity have tested the state's storage and distribution capacity multiple times in the past 2 decades, with 2021 to 2022 representing one of the driest 2-year periods in California's recorded history. The Colorado River, which provides approximately 25% of Los Angeles's water supply through the Metropolitan Water District, has been over-allocated since the Colorado River Compact of 1922, apportioned among 7 states and Mexico at a total volume that the river has rarely produced since the compact was signed. Lake Mead, the primary Colorado River storage reservoir, reached its lowest level since its creation in July 2022 at approximately 27% capacity. The Bureau of Reclamation has been imposing mandatory reductions on Colorado River water users since 2022. Los Angeles has invested heavily in water recycling and conservation. The Metropolitan Water District's Pure Water Southern California project aims to produce 1 million acre-feet of recycled water per year by 2035, which would be enough to serve approximately 400,000 homes. Conservation programs have reduced per capita water use significantly since the 1990s, but the supply reduction from climate change may outpace the conservation gains. The budget is broken. The city of Los Angeles operates on a budget of approximately $12 billion per year. That sounds like an enormous amount until you consider that it funds police, fire, public works, planning, recreation, and the full range of city services for approximately 4 million people, and that the pension obligations from the city's defined benefit retirement system for city workers consume an increasingly large portion of that budget. The Los Angeles City Employees Retirement System, LACIERS, and the Los Angeles Fire and Police Pensions, LAFPP, together hold pension liabilities that have been a source of sustained fiscal pressure for years. The city contributes approximately $1.5 billion per year to pension systems, money that was previously available for services. As the workforce ages and the retiree population grows relative to the active employee population, the contribution burden increases. The specific fiscal consequence: the city has deferred maintenance on infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, storm drains, public buildings, for years because the available budget after personnel costs, salaries, benefits, pensions, does not cover the full maintenance requirement. Los Angeles has documented sidewalk liability. The city has been sued repeatedly for injuries caused by broken and uplifted sidewalks that have not been repaired, because the sidewalk repair backlog exceeds the budget allocated for repair. The estimated sidewalk repair backlog alone has been placed at over $1 billion. The road condition in Los Angeles reflects the same chronic underfunding. The city's own Street Services Bureau has documented that a significant proportion of Los Angeles streets are in poor or failed condition by standard pavement quality metrics, with repair costs exceeding the annual budget for road maintenance by a wide margin. The deferred maintenance accumulates compound interest in the form of more expensive repairs. A road surface that costs $5 per square foot to maintain as a crack seal project costs $25 per square foot to resurface when the cracks become potholes and the potholes become structural failures. The pension obligation growth is not unique to Los Angeles. It is a characteristic of California municipal finance broadly and of most cities that built defined benefit pension systems in the mid-20th century and have since lived with the actuarial consequences of those promises. But it is more acute in Los Angeles because the city made more generous pension promises, has more retirees relative to current employees than smaller cities, and faces higher costs for everything, including public employee compensation, due to the same high cost of living that makes the city difficult for everyone else. The specific budget math that locals who follow it describe as unsustainable. If pension costs continue to grow as a share of the budget, and if the city's revenue base is constrained by the population and business departures, the budget pressure on everything that is not legally mandated, maintenance, parks, libraries, non-emergency services, will intensify. Los Angeles is not yet at the fiscal crisis threshold that produced Detroit's 2013 bankruptcy. The question that the fiscal analysis community is asking is whether the trajectory leads in that direction and at what speed. The crime perception gap and the reality behind it. Los Angeles crime statistics are one of the more contested data points in the collapse conversation. Violent crime in Los Angeles peaked in the early 1990s. The homicide rate in 1992, the year of the Rodney King riots, was approximately 40 per 100,000 residents. By 2019, it had fallen to approximately 7 per 100,000. The city is significantly safer than it was at its peak by every metric, and yet locals increasingly say they feel unsafe. The specific disconnect: property crime, vehicle burglary, car theft, retail theft, has increased significantly in the post-pandemic period, producing a lived experience of crime that is different from the violent crime statistics. A resident whose car was broken into 3 times in a year, or who watched organized retail theft at a pharmacy that subsequently closed its location, has a crime experience that is real and documented even if it is not reflected in the homicide rate. The other factor, the visibility of dysfunction in public spaces, the encampments, the people in mental health crisis on transit, the specific quality of despair that is visible on streets and in parks, produces a psychological experience of urban disorder that affects residents' sense of safety regardless of the statistical crime rate. People who feel unsafe leave, and the people who are leaving Los Angeles are disproportionately the middle-class residents and the businesses that serve them. The retail environment in Los Angeles has been specifically affected by the intersection of organized retail theft, economic pressure on brick-and-mortar retail generally, and the specific visibility of store closures. Several major pharmacy chains, CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid, have closed multiple Los Angeles locations since 2020, citing theft losses and store economics. The closure of pharmacies and grocery stores in urban neighborhoods creates food desert and healthcare access problems for residents who relied on those locations, and the visible shuttered storefronts amplify the perception of urban decline. The transit system adds a specific dimension. The Los Angeles Metro rail and bus system, which has been expanding significantly in anticipation of the 2028 Olympics, has been dealing with a documented increase in crime and disorder on its vehicles and at its stations since the pandemic-era drop in ridership that left the system with a different user population. Metro ridership fell dramatically during the pandemic and has recovered partially, but not fully to pre-pandemic levels. The specific challenge? A transit system with low ridership has fewer people on platforms and trains, whose presence itself provides informal social safety, creating conditions where disorder is both more likely and more visible. The LAPD staffing situation has compounded the response capacity. The department has been significantly below its authorized staffing level for several years, a combination of attrition, reduced recruitment interest post-2020, and competition for officers from other agencies. Fewer officers means slower response times and less proactive patrol, conditions that affect the quality of policing regardless of the statistical crime rate. The exodus, who is leaving and where they're going. Los Angeles County lost population in 2021 and 2022, an unusual event for a region that grew consistently for most of the 20th century. The California Department of Finance and the U.S. Census Bureau documented net domestic outmigration from California in the post-pandemic period, with Los Angeles County among the largest contributors to that outmigration. The net domestic migration figure, Californians leaving for other states minus Americans moving to California from other states, was negative for several consecutive years. The destinations are specific: Las Vegas, Phoenix, Boise, Portland until recently, Dallas, Austin, Nashville, and Florida generally. The common thread is lower cost of living, lower taxes, no state income tax in Nevada, Florida, and Texas, more affordable housing, and, in many cases, a sense of less urban dysfunction. Many people who leave Los Angeles are explicit about the multiple factors: the cost of housing, the quality of public schools, the state of public spaces, the taxes, and the feeling that the city and state government are not effectively managing the problems that are visible every day. As journalist and author Joe Mozingo, who has written extensively about Los Angeles for the Los Angeles Times, described the current moment. The people who are leaving are not people who hate Los Angeles. Most of them love it. They are people who have concluded, after years of trying to make it work, that the math doesn't work for their family. And when the people who love a place the most start leaving, that's when you know something has genuinely changed. The net migration loss is not catastrophic in absolute numbers. Los Angeles remains one of the largest and most economically significant metropolitan areas in the world, and immigration from other countries continues to partially offset the domestic outmigration. But population loss is a leading indicator of fiscal stress. Fewer residents mean lower property tax revenue, lower sales tax revenue, and lower income tax revenue, which means less money for the services whose deterioration drove people to leave in the first place. This is the specific doom loop that has hollowed out cities like Detroit and Cleveland. And while Los Angeles is far from that trajectory and scale, the dynamic is the same in character. The people who are leaving skew toward the middle class and toward the demographic most likely to have options. Homeowners who can capture the equity in their California homes to buy significantly larger homes in lower-cost markets, dual-income households with portable careers in technology and finance, retirees who find that their California retirement savings stretch much further in Nevada, Arizona, or Florida. The people who cannot leave, who have family roots, community connections, jobs that require physical presence, or insufficient savings to absorb a move, stay and absorb the cumulative effects of the exodus around them. The business community has also been leaving in specific and documented ways. CBRE Group reported in multiple years that Los Angeles saw net negative office absorption, more companies reducing their office footprint than expanding it. And the post-pandemic commercial real estate environment has been particularly difficult in downtown Los Angeles, where office vacancy rates have risen significantly. Several significant California-headquartered companies relocated their headquarters to Texas during the 2018 to 2023 period, including CBRE itself. Oracle, Tesla, Palo Alto-based, relocated to Austin, and others, citing lower taxes, lower cost of living for employees, and a more business-friendly regulatory environment. The tourism numbers tell a related story. Los Angeles received approximately 50.9 million visitors in 2019. The pandemic collapse was followed by a partial recovery, but the city's tourism infrastructure, the hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues that depend on visitor spending, has been dealing with the simultaneous challenges of homelessness visibility, crime perception, and the specific image problem created by national media coverage of Los Angeles's difficulties. Several major conventions that were scheduled for the Los Angeles Convention Center have relocated to other cities in recent years. What is actually being done, and whether it's enough? The Los Angeles of 2025 is not passively collapsing. There are significant efforts underway on multiple fronts that are worth documenting accurately. Inside Safe, Mayor Karen Bass's initiative to move homeless people from encampments into interim housing and then permanent housing had cleared thousands of people from encampments by 2024. The program's specific methodology, rapid response, offers of shelter, and case management rather than enforcement is a genuine operational shift from prior approaches. The state of California passed SB 9 and SB 10 to reform restrictive zoning. The Metropolitan Water District is investing in water recycling at unprecedented scale. The Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Metro, completed the D-Line, Purple Line extension to Westwood in October 2023 and is continuing to expand the rail network. The city and county have invested in infrastructure despite the budget pressure. The honest assessment is this: the problems facing Los Angeles are structural, long-term, and in some cases, the insurance market withdrawal, the fire risk, the water supply pressure, operating on timelines and at scales that municipal government cannot fully address regardless of political will or competence. The homeless crisis is in part a housing crisis, which is in part a zoning crisis, which took 50 years to create and will take decades to resolve. The fire risk is in part a climate crisis, which is global. The water supply pressure is a regional infrastructure problem that predates most of the people currently in office. The political environment in Los Angeles is also genuinely difficult. The city council was consumed by a major scandal in 2022 when audio recordings of a private conversation among several council members, including Council President Nuri Martinez and other senior officials, revealed racist comments about Black and Latino residents and a discussion of manipulating district boundaries to protect political power. The scandal resulted in multiple resignations and severely damaged the council's credibility at a moment when public confidence in city institutions was already strained. Los Angeles has significant, genuine assets. The Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach together constitute the largest port complex in the United States, handling approximately 40% of all container imports. The entertainment industry, despite disruptions from streaming and from the writers' and actors' strikes of 2023, remains the most concentrated media production infrastructure in the world. The Los Angeles tech industry, centered in Silicon Beach, the Playa Vista, Venice, and Santa Monica corridor, has grown significantly. The city is hosting the 2028 Summer Olympics, which will require and generate significant infrastructure investment. Los Angeles is not economically finished. What is changing is the accumulation, the point at which the specific number and severity of simultaneous unresolved crises produces a civic atmosphere that feels qualitatively different from the chronic difficulty of the past. Whether collapse is the right word for that accumulation is a judgment call. That something has genuinely shifted is what the people who live there are saying, with increasing frequency and specificity, in a way that is different from the complaint tradition that has always been part of living in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, the city that sold the 20th century its image of itself, is confronting the specific price of building a metropolis in the wrong place with borrowed water, borrowed money, and borrowed time. The resources are real. The problems are also real. How the next decade resolves that tension will be one of the more consequential American urban stories of the century. Hit that like button and subscribe. More content like this coming.